Great. Well, here we are doing stalls. I wanted to give people an opportunity to figure out where they stand in their herd of two with their horse. And the easiest way to do that is to observe your horse in his herd of equines. So plan on, say, an afternoon or a morning or something where the horses aren't necessarily fighting over like just being grained or just being hayed. You know, they're mingling about within their paddock space as their day just progresses, not so much when there's a heightened reason for activity. And then go out and just watch. Sit outside the paddock. Don't be an interruption or, you know, something that the horses are going to take more notice to because it's different. Don't be a disruption or a distraction to your horses. Go out and sit outside the fence line. Park your car along the fence. You know, drink your coffee and just watch your horses. Pick, while watching your horses, which one you think you are. And then, as you watch, see what kind of body language is being used on the horse that's second man. See what body language is being used on the horse that's third man. See what body language is being used on the top man. And then, again, figure out where you stand. Where's your position? If you were out there amongst them and you were another horse, what's your position? Are you top man? Are you second man? Are you second to bottom man, or are you bottom man? Okay? I don't know how many horses you'll have an opportunity to observe, but hopefully at least two. Because at least two, you'll be able to see the body language that you need to see to determine whether or not you are top man or bottom man. When there's multiple horses, you can see where you rank and then where you might be able to improve if you find that you are not top man. Your goal will always, always be to find the way to be the top man. Now, being top man is not necessarily about being tougher. It's not necessarily about being more aggressive. It's about your body language and your presentation of your body language to allow the other horses to find comfort in their surroundings, because they know they've got a good leader at the post, and if something's going to happen, that lead horse will tell them what to do. That's what a leader is, and that's how the rest of the herd views a leader. Do they sometimes think the leader's a jerk? Of course, because the leader is. You know, he's got to keep everybody in line. He's got to tell everybody, you know, what's what, and, you know, this is how I move you, and if I think you're enjoying that little patch of grass more than you should be, you know, I might come over and remind you that I'm the boss and tell you to move. Some leaders aren't aggressive. Some leaders are very passive. You might not really realize that your horse is the leader of his herd because you might see there's more aggressive horses in his herd. However, when it comes down to moving the herd and the respect that's paid to a certain horse, you may find that it's actually was a huge mistake on your part that you thought it was a different horse was the leader. Sometimes the most aggressive ones are the ones that are struggling to maintain their position at all. Sometimes the more aggressive ones are the ones that are the most fearful of being challenged, so they come at everybody aggressively to give off the impression that they are tough and don't mess with me. But truthfully, often the most aggressive ones are not the leaders. The ones that are the leaders are the clever ones, the ones that know how to get this guy to move without him even realizing he was just told to move. Okay? where the leader can come into the second guy's space and start grazing nose to nose with him, and oh, how cute. Well, eventually you're going to see some kind of body language that's going to indicate to that second man, you better move. You better move. I've decided that this is my spot now. You better move. Go find yourself another spot, and you'll see which horse leaves. Even if it's only a few steps, note which horse leaves, because the horse that actually left is not the leader. So if the horse that normally kicks and carries on is the horse that would leave when another horse came into his space, he's not the leader. And then watch how they move each other. Watch how maybe subtly, like I said, he'll come and he'll just sort of start grazing in the same space, and then subtly get the horse to yield maybe to his left. And then watch over the course of even an hour, watch how far that horse that's so subtly moving the other horse, watch how far he gets him across the paddock. Watch where he gets him to. And then watch how his patience, you might learn how patient or impatient your horse is, or, a horse is, based on, how long will he just do the passive moving? Or will he finally just say, oh, come on, go over there, okay? So you'll see, like how long before your horse picks his head up and chases the other horse to the side of the paddock that he actually has been trying to politely ask him to go. And then just see what languages are being used on you. See if your horses comes into your space in a passive way, causing you to step off. See if your horse is nuzzling on you and causing you to move away. Now, that brings up another topic of the lead horse is the only horse in the herd that can groom on any horse. And when he does, he gives any horse, low man, tall man, doesn't matter, he gives any horse permission to groom back. In fact, that's actually what he's doing. He's asking a low man to groom him. And it could be the lowest man in the herd. You'd be like, wow, I never thought he'd ever be around that one. But turns out that he wanted to get groomed bad enough that he's going to go over to whoever and give a little nuzzle on the wither or wherever, and that horse has been now granted permission to groom him. But if that low man ever thought he could just walk up to the lead man and say, I'd like to be grooming with you, that lead horse would bite him, kick him, do whatever it took to remind him that that is not his position to ever initiate grooming. And then it goes down the ranks, okay? So the second man can groom on anybody below him except for the high man. The next guy down can groom on anybody below him except for man number 2 and number 1. Okay, see how that works? So the lowest guy is the one that's going to do a lot of rolling if he's itchy, because he's not going to be able to ask anybody to scratch him. But he sure is going to make himself available when it looks like somebody's itchy and wants to be scratched, because then it'll give him an opportunity to groom back and get himself scratched as well. So keep in mind, if your horse initiates grooming on you, you take his bridle off and he ducks his head over to your shoulder or to your back and starts rubbing on you, yes, he's itchy, but he also believes he has the right to initiate grooming with you. Right there, he just told you he's the leader. So just, sometimes we think it's cute. Sometimes we think, oh, isn't that so sweet? He just loves me so much. Look at him nuzzle on me. And often that's not really what he's telling you. He's really telling you and reminding you. Okay, those are moments that they remind you he's the boss. He's reminding you he's the boss. Okay? Horses that drag you around. If you watch how, if they're not just subtly pushing each other around in the field, if you watch how they move each other around in the field, one of the ways they move each other is they'll put their nose, like they'll stand on an angle towards the tail, and they'll put their nose down under the flank or the crease of the belly and the hind leg, and they'll nudge. Well, if you see how horses act when you have a halter on them and you're about to take them out to graze them, or you're just about to take them out and they're losing their patience with you, what does a horse do? They drop their head a little bit and they push out, right? Knowing that they're tugging on the rope. Well, that's how they've adapted to pushing humans around. It's the same exact thing, it's just they're doing it with what they can to make you move, okay? So horses adapt very quickly to how to make the human move. I mean, it's all about learning the language, all about the tests and the games, and how to make what they want to happen. It's all manipulation. So you manipulating your horse to move is not mean. It's all part of their game. So do yourself a favor. Do something very interesting for yourself. Go out one day. Plan to not ride. Plan to not do anything if you only have an hour. I mean, if you have an hour and some, then of course, you can also plan to ride after. But go out there, and while your horse is in his natural environment, his calm, there's no stress, he's not being reintroduced to his paddock. See, don't go ride first and then put him out, because it'll take him a while to get settled back in. Because the other thing that you might not realize is horses choose their leader every single day. So if they go out there and this guy's not feeling very well, but he's usually the leader, they're going to ask him through dominance games, through body language, are you up for the task today? Are you good? You're going to be the leader today? And if he says yes through, responses to other physical or, mental games, then they leave him alone and settle in. So often when you first put your horse out, that all takes place, even if it's when you're returning him to the field from riding. So if you notice, they don't just go right in and settle down, which is what you would think they would do. Instead, they kind of go around and maybe start pushing another horse around real quick. Like everybody else is meandering along, and maybe there's piles of hay this time of year, and you just put your horse back out in the field, and your horse runs to one that they know for sure they've always been able to push around. So they're going to go push him. And then they've reestablished at least that position on the totem pole right from the get. So, often you watch your horse do that and you think, oh, you're so mean, leave him alone. He's doing his job. You might see that he might give it a gamble and try to go to the guy who's usually above him and see if he's up for the job today. And if he's not up for the job today, well, then he's going to go and take that position for the day at least. So what I would suggest is going out when the horses are just doing their morning routine, you haven't interrupted them in any way, and then go ahead and watch. How do they interact with each other? How do they move each other around? And then pick out which one you are. Does my horse move me around more than I move my horse around? Do I find that my horse steps into my space until I step out of that same space? Do I find that my horse pushes me with his head? Do I find that my horse initiates grooming when I haven't initiated it? Do I find that my horse drags me around? Do I find that my horse tells me where we're going to go? Or am I pretty confident that when I decide we're going to go here, my horse says, yes, ma'am? Like in my case, another test that you can do is one of the things I do is I call it active grazing. Take your horse out in hand. Often we do that with our horses after we ride. We hand graze our horses. What I do is I'll tell my horse that, I have a cue for my horse to put his head down. I raise my hand, he puts his head down. I tap his withers, he picks his head up. I tell my horse, this 3x3 space right here looks like a perfect space for you to go ahead and have some grass. So I raise my hand, he puts his head down, and I leave him alone. And I look at him, I make sure there's no bumps or scratches that I missed, and I just spend some time talking to him. I don't generally touch him because that's his time, he's enjoying his time. If my horse, if I reach out and pet my horse and he doesn't move off of me, then I know that my my touch is welcomed. If my horse steps off of me when I touch him, he's telling me that he'd rather I didn't do that. If I decide that he's groomed there enough or grazed there enough, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap his withers, pick his head up, choose another spot, take him to that other spot, raise my hand, drop his head back down, tell him you can graze right here. And by doing that, as I keep reminding him that even though I'm not a horse, I'm telling you where you're going to be allowed to eat, and I'm telling you where we're going to go. Do that with your horse. Will help establish some leadership with your horse if you're finding that you really are sitting more on the bottom end of the totem pole, that you thought you didn't realize that you were so low in your horse's eyes. And then start initiating certain things that will start to establish leadership with your horse in subtle ways, and that's one subtle way. Never tolerate your horse dragging you around. That is something that I believe is a behavior that needs to be corrected. And then, then say, but yes, no, you do not tell me we're going to go over there and come back here and you stand here and mind your business. And when your horse is not tugging and acting anxious, when your horse finally softens and relaxes and says, well, then where would you like to go? Then you say, I'd like to come over here. How about you graze right here? Before you know it, your horse is going to say, well, that wasn't really that bad, so I guess I'll listen to you. You might have to do that multiple times. You might have to do that on multiple visits. But gradually your horse will ask you, where can we graze? Where are you going to let me graze? Did you pick a spot yet? Versus yanking you down. Like, there's nothing worse than a horse that as soon as you step out of the barn and you come to a grassy area, that horse drops his head and he becomes a lawn dart, right? He becomes a lawn anchor. You're not getting that head up. Or if you get it up to where they just skim the top of the grass until they finally anchor themselves again. That's always fun. My horses know that if I tell them that they can graze, like say fresh out of the paddock when I'm just turning around and latching the gate, I let them, put their head down and have a nibble right there. But as soon as I say, okay, they pick their heads up and they know it's time to walk. It's no different than when they're in their stalls and they try to barge out of their stall door. My horses know that when I put the halter on, you know what, I'm going to cover that in the next segment. Go out, watch your horses graze, see where you fit on that totem pole. I'm going to talk about halters next.